On the vast African savanna, under harsh natural conditions and constant social scrutiny, the Maasai have chosen neither to submit to change nor to control their environment. Rather than asking how they survived such a land, the real question is how they have remained resilient while the world around them continues to change, a question answered by the way they choose to live. More than 2 million Maasai live across the vast savannas of Kenya and Tanzania, places where the horizon stretches without interruption and nature is always fully present. There are no dense forests to hide behind, no towering mountains to cast long shadows, and no dark corners where people can disappear for long. The sun, strong winds, heavy rains, and migrating herds are always right in front of them, impossible to avoid, impossible to postpone. This landscape demands full presence. Every action unfolds under the watchful eyes of the community and the constant gaze of nature itself. On the savanna, there is no room for prolonged hiding, and no silence long enough to escape responsibility. And so, from an early age, the Maasai learn to stand upright, not only in body, but in the way they face life, hardship, and themselves. In the Maasai world, livestock, especially cattle, are not simply property or sources of food. They sit at the center of life itself, forming a bond between people, the land, the climate, and the community.
Hi, Billy. Hey. They stay as a group, very disciplined.
So these are the goats, and this is
Cattle provide milk, meat, and materials for daily living, but more importantly, they measure a person's honor and capability. A Maasai is not judged by what he owns for himself, but by how well he can care for and protect his herd, especially during seasons of drought and hardship. Wealth is not found in endless accumulation, but in the ability to sustain life beyond one's own. When the cattle are strong, the community is fed. When they weaken, people are forced to reflect on the way they are living.
They are going to kill the lion.
The Maasai live in clusters of homes known as manyatas, low, simple structures built from earth, branches, and dried cow dung. They are not designed to last for decades, but to be taken down and rebuilt whenever the herds need to move. This sense of impermanence is not a sign of lack, but a conscious way of living that follows the rhythm of the savanna.
Cow dung on top.
They cover the cow dung. They mix it and ash.
Ash and cow dung mixed together.
And water, yeah.
The same.
No, the same family.
Same one, yeah.
My father lived there.
Yeah?
And I live here and some from my brother.
You live here with your brothers, yeah.
And my
Jivu. Jivu.
So ashes.
Ash and hapa kuna nini hapa? Store. Oh, this is their store, man. This is crazy. Crazy.
Within this community, no one truly lives only for themselves. Children grow up among the cattle, the sun, the wind, and the repeated tasks of everyday life. From an early age, they learn to read the weather, remember the paths of the herds, and understand that individual survival is always tied to responsibility toward the community. There is no long period of complete protection. Everyone must learn, early on, how to take their place within the shared order. From their living space, their way of making a living, and the structure of their community, a philosophy of life emerges naturally. The Maasai do not seek to control nature, nor do they see the land and sky as something to be conquered or subdued. But they also do not dissolve into nature until they disappear. Instead, they choose to stand within it, keeping enough distance to show respect, yet close enough to accept responsibility. Living on the savanna has taught the Maasai how to stand upright before nature. And from that stance, honor becomes the foundation of everything they will go on to become. Here, no one is born as someone. Identity is not something to be chosen or declared, but something earned, passed through stages, endured through trials, and recognized by the community. Maasai society is organized around a strict age-based order, where each stage of life has clear boundaries. Children, youths, warriors, adults, and elders are not simply divided by age, but by responsibility and by the weight of their voice within the community. No one can skip a stage, and no one can simply leap ahead to a higher position. In this order, personal identity is never self-proclaimed. A person truly becomes only when the community recognizes that he has gone far enough, endured long enough, and lived up to his role. This is what creates a society where the self never stands above the collective order, and where everyone knows exactly where they stand within the flow of the community. In the Maasai world, the human body is not a closed, private space, but part of a larger social order. The bright red cloaks standing out against the savanna are not meant to draw personal attention, but to affirm the presence of the community and signal danger. The colorful beadwork is not decoration, but a visual language that reveals a person's age, role, and position within the group. No one dresses to stand above others. Clothing is not about expressing individuality, but about placing each person in their rightful place. In this way, the body becomes a living social map, where every detail carries meaning and information.
Manarana aja gua.
Ya.
Gajah Manarana. Gajah Manarana. Karena ya tunjukkan aja nah raji dia loro.
Ana hana lari. Ga raga ina hana.
The spiritual peak of Maasai warrior life is most clearly expressed through the Adomo dance. Men form a circle on the open savanna, and one by one, they step into the center, jumping straight upward under the gaze of everyone around them. There is no stage, no spotlight, no elaborate instruments, only the body, the breath, and complete focus. Adumu is not a competition to see who can jump the highest. The one who earns respect is not the one who outshines others, but the one who maintains calm, control, and self-discipline while all eyes are watching. Jump up, land, then step back into the circle, never holding the center for too long, never seeking to assert the ego. In that moment, honor is not found in being seen, but in knowing when to step forward and when to return to one's place. If living is the foundation, and becoming is a journey granted by the community, then at this point, the Maasai are faced with a question their ancestors never had to answer. What happens when the outside world begins to redefine their value? The savanna where the Maasai live today is no longer the limitless open space it once was. National borders have been drawn, wildlife reserves established, and roads and tourist zones have appeared. Land that was once used flexibly, following the movement of cattle, is now divided, measured, and restricted. A nomadic way of life, built on freedom of movement, becomes increasingly difficult in a world governed by maps and paperwork. The Maasai do not resist change through direct confrontation. But with every meter of land reduced, with every pathway blocked, quiet pressure builds on a way of life shaped across generations. As space changes, the question of identity becomes impossible to ignore. Along with tourism and media, the image of the Maasai has spread across the world: red cloaks, vibrant beadwork, and the Adumu dance performed on the open savanna. But this visibility comes with a paradox. What was once a living part of everyday community life now risks becoming something staged, photographed, and consumed. Rituals that once carried meaning through transition and recognition are sometimes performed more for the camera than for the eyes of the community. Clothing that once functioned as an internal social language is now often seen as a signature look. The Maasai are seen everywhere, but they are not always understood. The most visible clash unfolds in the lives of young Maasai today. Many of them attend school and gain access to technology, new languages, and a modern pace of life. They stand between two value systems: on one side, age-based order, rituals, and responsibility to the community; on the other, individuality, choice, and new opportunities. The question they face is not simply whether to keep or abandon tradition. It is a deeper question: how to change without losing who they are. As the modern world celebrates flexibility and speed, while Maasai culture emphasizes discipline and endurance, tension between these two ways of living becomes almost unavoidable.
Leave, 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 depart, depart.
The Maasai have never asked the world to return to living as they do. Their story is not a call to romanticize the past or reject the present. It simply raises a quiet but persistent question: does the modern world have enough space for ways of living that are different from its own?
Fast, fast.
And as this story comes to a close, the savannah remains vast, silent, and offering no answers. It is only people who are left to ask themselves, in a world that never stops changing, what is it that we cannot afford to lose? Tribe World Discovery does not chase quick curiosity. We simply invite you to listen to communities living at the edge of the modern world. And if you would like to continue this journey with us, consider subscribing. Many more stories are still waiting to be told.